Is this one going to work? I'll use this one. Cool. So yeah, hi everybody. My background's in software engineering and embedded systems engineering. And then about 4 months ago, there was a job going for a security engineer, and well, you don't get it if you don't apply for it. So applied for it, and then here I am, which is awesome. I'm going to talk to you about bug bounty hunting. How hard can it be? So the idea is I submitted this talk. Well, it could go either way, right? I'll submit the talk. If it's really easy, then that's the talk. If it's really hard, then that's the talk. So we'll find out. I was at Kiwicon, one of the after parties, and I was talking to a guy, and he said, "Oh, moving down to Wellington." So, "Oh yeah, cool. What are you going to do? You got a job?" He's like, "Oh nah, I'm just going to do some bounty hunting." I was staying on my friend's couch. I'm like, what? Until that moment, it didn't really occur to me that you could just do that as a way of making money and feeding yourself. So I thought, well, I should give that a go as well, see what it's all about. And I saw this article come up. Netgear unveiled world's most easiest bug bounty. Amazing. This is for me. I'm getting started. Netgear has had a rocky past. So let's have a quick look. How hard can it be? So go into BugCrowd, which is one of the two main bug bounty platforms. Find their program, register on their site. By the way, OPSEC, you got to start at the beginning. Like if you register with your Jeremy@Stott email address, and then at some point down the line you want to hide your identity, that's no good. So you got to start at the beginning. Anyway, this is a public talk, so never mind. So I thought so it's got $15,000. I'm in the money. This is great. I only need one of these every few months, maybe one a year. Might do for couchsurfing in Wellington. Scroll down the page and you find their scope. So usually they tell you like, okay, this is the stuff that we want you to have a look at, and it's all this Arlo stuff. This was all of it. This is the entire scope, and Arlo is these security cameras. And I thought, oh, okay, basically it's just their latest product. So all those cool, rocky past Netgear, none of that's in scope, just these ones. So went down to JB Hi-Fi and sort of saw on the shelf there, $367. And sort of, at this point, not really sure if it's a bug bounty program or just a sales pitch to get me to buy their product. So I'm there, in the store, I'm arguing with the guy, I'm like, oh yeah, I think this is the one I want. He's like, oh really? Okay, well, have you considered these ones? Like, no, actually this is the one I want. Oh, what's your requirements, I'll just take that one, that's okay. And they gave me a discount, so it's great. Got it for $350. So I just keep like a running tally of all of the money that I've made, or not made, over the course of this project. So there we are, $350. So of course you've got to open it up. I've got this embedded systems background. I want to see what's inside, pull it apart. Actually, it was a really impressive design. I thought they put a lot of thought into it. Would have been hell to design this thing. Like stacked PCBs is just not a great idea. I don't know how many layers these things are, but they're all sort of squished on top of each other to make it look this beautiful industrial designed thing. Poor guys. So they did a really great job. Opening it up, it was pretty easy. They just had the Phillips head screwdrivers. Sort of taking it apart, more things, nothing obvious at this point. This is when you've gone too far. This is like the CCD, so if any dust gets on there, that's kind of permanent, and oh well, and the lens popped off. That's okay, I managed to get it all back together again. Of course, I was actually taking these pictures in the hotel room a couple of nights ago, because I hadn't taken the pictures yet. I disassembled it at the beginning of the year. And I thought, oh, there's no debug ports on this thing. Move on, that's a shame. Until, while I was taking these pictures a couple of nights ago, what's this? There's like 4 little things on the side there. This is suspicious. These look like debug ports. Why did I not see this at the beginning of the year? It would have saved me a lot of trouble. I did happen to pack like a microscope, a USB microscope. I don't know why. But I didn't have screwdrivers. Because I couldn't take them on the airplane. I didn't check a bag. So I had to go and buy some screwdrivers to get to this point. Anyway, so what would you look for? Why would this be interesting, this debug port? I'll explain in a minute, but sort of how would you identify which pins are which? This one's pretty much obviously ground. And the reason is, as you can see, like little star bits goes out to the edge of the other PCBs. That's because it's all one big ground plane. So that one's probably ground. This one's probably power because you can see the trace is really thick. So compared to the other one on the other side, it's like this little thin one. So the thick one, that's probably going to be the power because it needs to hold a bit of current. So that's great. And these two are probably RX and TX for a serial port. Doesn't really matter which way around they are because now I only need to try both of them. I don't have to try all four, and connecting potentially my computer to the power one might not be such a great idea, but the RX TX ones are generally okay. So at the speakers dinner, they graciously gave us a swag bag which included an Arduino. I really needed this. It was key. I didn't have any wires. I had 2 staples and a twisty tie thing, right? So, and those twisty tie things, they're designed to be, to be bended. I'm trying like sitting there for 5 minutes bending this thing, trying to break it apart. Finally got it apart and sort of hooked it all up. And next thing is, you've got to write some Arduino code. You've got this is basically man-in-the-middling the serial port, right? So your computer's saying, here's serial, and then the camera's saying, here's serial, and you kind of swap them on this Arduino. And it's kind of handy because you can change the baud rates independently of each other. So you can leave the computer baud rate at a fast one, and then you can iterate through the baud rates of the device you're looking at. And it's probably, most likely, one of those ones. Like there are others, but it's probably one of those. And it ended up being 115200. So then you plug it in, you turn it on, and bam, it actually spits out some stuff into your serial port. This is amazing. This is like, yes! But that's all it spits out. Nothing else. So normally at this point, you would probably see the whole stack trace, like the whole Linux starting up, and usually like a root shell. Like it's just like, oh, here you go. You've got the debug port. You must want to do some debugging. So, but it didn't. It's this great, no output at all except for the bootloader. And it's got this AM boot version number. That's bad news too because it's this proprietary thing, and it's the same chip that they use in GoPros and stuff, and it's all this terrible SDK that only works on Windows, and I didn't even want to go there. But there's usually a trick with bootloaders is before they boot Linux. So you can see there it's jumped to the flash to boot Linux. You can kind of interrupt that if you need to figure out how the debug is working. So the bootloader. So sometimes you need to push a key before it starts really quickly. In this case, I needed to type AMBOOT, so AM boot, name of the bootloader. You type that really fast, and then it drops you into the bootloader. So at this point, it's like, hey, okay, what do you want to do now? Normally, you could just modify the boot parameters. And once you can modify the boot parameters, you can do whatever you want on the device, because you can change what program it runs when it first starts, and you can enable all sorts of goodness. But here, they've done it right. You can see ter is actually enter. Enter 6 to 64 ASCII characters. So there's some kind of password. This is sometimes if you've got the name of the bootloader, you can just search for default passwords. But because this was this proprietary thing, it didn't really have that. And I tried a couple of passwords, and it prints out the SHA-256 result. I don't know what that is. And after 3 attempts, it's like password error, not doing anything anymore until you reboot it. So I don't know why they told me it was a SHA-256. But actually, that's potentially really bad news for me. So the hint is that they're using a hash of their password. They're hard-coding the password, but they're only storing the hash. So even if I ripped out the flash and got at the actual password, because I've got it, it's in my hands. I've got the password. It's just in this device. Even if I got at it, it would only be the hash. So I don't know what key generates that hash. And it was salted, because I'm like, oh, maybe I'll just compare my own SHA-256. That wasn't the same. So really, really great job. Not so great for me, so I moved on. Tried to do some traffic sniffing of the Ethernet traffic. So it's a Wi-Fi camera after all. And the best setup I came up with was to have a virtual machine with 2 USB Ethernet adapters, and then run like a firewall/router on the virtual machine. That worked really, really well. I've used it a number of different times. It's super easy to set up. You just download the pfSense firewall. You just basically install it, and it's good to go straight away. And then you've got this nice web UI. You can configure it and everything. You can route traffic to your proxies. You can this is like a whole world to explore. Packages you can install. So that was really cool. But unfortunately, I don't know if you guys have seen this error before. Your connection's not private. The camera didn't trust my dodgy setup, and actually also Netgear didn't. Well, I'm not sure whether Netgear trusts the dodgy setup, but definitely the camera didn't trust the dodgy setup. So normally you can just click, advanced, okay. You don't click that, right? You you go, "Ooh, this is a big problem." But if you were debugging and you knew what you're doing, you could click through this and go, "Yes, I know that this is not a valid certificate," but you can't do that on the camera. I don't have a keyboard attached to it, so that was a bit of a blocker for me. The last kind of input method for this camera was a QR code, which is when you set it up, you give it your wireless username and password, and the web UI tells you, hold your camera in front of this, and then it scans this, and then it connects to my Wi-Fi network. So potentially my Wi-Fi credentials are in there. Maybe you could project your own QR code through the window, someone else's house while their camera was setting. I don't know. I never really got that to work. About the same time, Matthew Garrett, who's a security whiz, he tweeted out, the Arlo smart camera system, security-wise, basically acceptable. Oh no, for IoT devices, basically acceptable is really high praise. And then as a reply to that, it's about the highest praise we've seen Matthew Garrett give anything ever. So this is not great. A few months later, I actually did find something in the camera. But I can't tell you about it because it's not disclosed yet. I might not have needed to actually buy the camera to find this one. That's okay though. Submitted in August, payment in October. So it actually takes quite a long time to get paid for these things, but yeah, got some money. My current rag on Bug Crowd, 2,117. I'm getting there. Really love the talk, the first thing. So inspirational. How hard can it be? I'm happy now. Update my total. Not quite in the black yet, but So 90 days is a long time, and you've got to be prepared to wait. So it's not going to be very fast. If you'd moved to Wellington already, you're going to be in trouble for a few months. Make sure you read the policy. So on the page, they give you a big policy. There's a whole bunch of hints in there as to what they want you to test, and maybe they reveal some things in there. But you've got to read that policy. It's kind of like your only guide at the beginning. And maybe do some recon before you buy the hardware. So there's a bit of a side quest here. At Vend, we launched a vulnerability disclosure program, which is kind of like a bug bounty, but just for kudos on their platforms. So it's kind of like a bit of an insight from the other side. It's a couple of stories, I guess, just to give you guys an idea of how it went. We had a lot of duplicate submissions. So we have this submission on the left, which says, someone says stored cross-site scripting. They gave you a description, they gave you some steps to reproduce it, and here's the impact. This was great. Hey, thanks very much. Can confirm, new valid vulnerability, awesome. And then also someone had submitted this RCE, remote code execution, and they just attached a video. Right? And so there were a couple of us looking at this, so we didn't both look at the same tickets. This one went to somebody else because it was potentially higher priority. And what do you do with a video? Oh God, do I trust VLC now? I don't know. So a VM later and transcoded it first and then run the video, just to see some grainy mouse screen capture thing. Not great. But actually we found out that, hey, hang on, this is not RCE. This is actually stored cross-site scripting. And not any stored cross-site scripting, it's that stored cross-site, that very same one. But this guy reported at 2:01 p.m., and the other guy reported at 2:15 p.m. So great, thanks for reporting, but now I've got to go back to this other guy and say, hey, this is a duplicate, I'm really sorry about that. And we learned not to say, can confirm new valid vulnerability. Maybe just adjust the language a bit to be, can confirm this is a vulnerability, just in case later on you need to go back and tell them it's a duplicate. We also had one where someone would say, hey, here's a vulnerability, here's a URL. You go to the URL, you'll figure it out, kind of thing. After hearing the talk yesterday morning, I could say 5 minutes and someone's already a duplicate. I can see why people do this, but it makes it really hard for the team on the other side. And then they comment, also number 2, and also number 3, these things. Well, oh no. So, hey man, one vulnerability per report. But okay, we'll look at them all because they're all important. And then somebody else submits vulnerability too. They've actually taken some time, description, steps to reproduce, and impact, but they reported it after the original guy reported it. So it's kind of heartbreaking, great report, thank you very much, but sorry, this is also a duplicate. So don't submit PDFs, video onlys, documents, VirtualBox images. We didn't actually get one of those, but anyway. Makes it really hard. Just be understanding about duplicates and clearly state your findings. So if you're going to be quick, just make sure it's very clear what you found. We also had any updates, we called it. So there might be some vulnerability, for example, clickjacking, and it's like, great, thank you, can take 90 days. And then sort of 5 days later, it's like, oh, sir, any updates? This is the most times I've been called sir as well on this program. It's quite incredible. Not yet, can take 90 days. It's with our engineering team. It's like, any updates, sir? You know? It's like, oh no, still no updates. We'll let you know. You know, and then they just sort of put a question mark. So, what do I do with that? Do I put an exclamation mark? I don't know. We have some people submitting things that are not in scope. So like, hey, here's this out of scope thing, and I found it. And we say, thanks very much, but that's out of scope of our program. And he says, are you sure? I think you should go back and have a look. I'm not. This is actually definitely a problem. And it's like quite embarrassing to go back going, oh, yeah, you're totally right. This is very important vulnerability you've reported. In the meantime, someone else had a very great report. You know, their time was 3 p.m. and you'd already told them, hey, you know, this was a great vulnerability. You've adjusted your language, which is great, but you still have to go back and tell them this is a duplicate. So you got to resist that urge to ask any updates. And I felt that with the camera that bug I submitted to Netgear. It was a long time, and I'd written my report, you know, nice report, and it's just that once they confirmed it, that's it. You just got to wait. You know, they've got a whole bunch of other things they're working on. It's gone into the backlog. It's, you know, who knows how their product team works. So it really is quite. I can see why people get a little bit, you know, wondering what's going on. I was checking my inbox every couple of days, like, oh, I wonder if they've, you know, sent me any messages, or have they paid me, or whatever. And don't work on anything that's clearly out of scope, or also, you know, clearly state what you found, so you can avoid mistakes potentially on the. You don't know who's going to be reviewing your submission. It could be someone with a lot of security background. It might be someone new on the team. So if you're as clear as possible, you're going to get results. I think finally we have multiple personalities. So we had a vulnerability, 3 bugs found. You know, number 1's this, number 2 is totally unrelated, number 3 is kind of related. And then they commented, hey, this is Bob, reported number 1. Any updates? And then, hey, this is Joe, report number 3. They're pretty slow responding to this. And then, like, yes, they are, aren't they, Chris? So they're having this conversation in one account, you know, with themselves on this comment list. What do you do about that? So it's public record, you know, so you got to embrace it. You can go back to them. You always got to be courteous and respect people, because you don't know what background they're from. And actually, to be honest, different cultures, backgrounds, thinking patterns, they're great for bug bounty hunting. They're going to find different bugs. So it can be intimidating. Sometimes the bug bounty programs can help out with more tricky submitters, but overall, pretty cool. So that's the side quest complete. We come back to doing some more hacking on my bug bounty quest. I know, I'll hack a switch. Not that switch, like this switch. Yeah, how hard can that be? They had a bug bounty program on HackerOne. $20,000 US. Now I'm in the real money. You know, 15,000, that was nothing. 20,000. They had a whole bunch of things in their scope I didn't really understand, but I thought, oh no, I'll get to that later. How hard can it be? So I bought the switch, that was $535. I bought the game because, you know, you can't just like have the switch without the game. It's not going to do much, right? I don't know why I bought the second game. I was in Hong Kong. It was on special. I'm like, ah. And I bought the HDMI to USB adapter thing. Like, I didn't really need that. I bought a case to keep it safe, right? I don't want to break it now. I spend all this money on it. Yeah. So basically, this whole talk was so I could tell my wife I got to buy a switch for work purposes. One other cool thing about the Switch is it's more popular hardware, so there are like some teardowns on it. People have picked it apart already. People are trying to hack it for homebrew. So, you know, I've got an X-ray of it. I could never get anywhere near like that with my own tools, right? So that's pretty cool. I can have a look inside it before actually opening it and potentially breaking it. So that's pretty cool. There's some cool pictures. I didn't really find much out on those. They did list a whole bunch of chips that were used inside of it, which is great. I don't have to go and open it up and find that now. If I was potentially interested in Bluetooth, you know, it's like, oh, it tells me what chipset it's using. Maybe I could go to their website, download data sheets and all that good stuff. So I still haven't opened the Switch. Technically didn't need to buy it at this point either, because all that's online, right? I didn't need the Switch to get that, but anyway. So I went back to my sniffing setup, basically mostly the same, except now I had a wireless component, because I didn't buy the USB Ethernet adapter for the Switch. I stopped myself at that point. And it was actually a bit harder to get the Wi-Fi going. But anyway, back to that. You can also just set the proxy settings on the Switch, which is a lot easier. You can just tell the Switch when you connect to the internet, hey, there's a proxy over here you should probably be using. And that proxy happens to be my man-in-the-middle proxy or my Zap proxy, but that's okay, it'll try and use that. These guys did even better than the last guys. And not only were they checking certificates, they had created their own CA, like what Ryan was talking about. So they had a CA, and for every device that they manufacture, they put a unique certificate on the Switch. And then when your Switch tries to connect to their servers, it says, hey, here's my certificate, and the servers can say, oh, this actually has been signed by our root certificate, so great, I'm going to trust your Switch. But they're unique per device as well, so they could potentially track which switches are which, and they could also deny someone from connecting to the website as well. So this is bad news. Technically, I also have this certificate, this private key. I've got the Switch in my hands. It's in there somewhere. Maybe I can get it out. And if I can get it out, I can put it in my proxy and then trick Nintendo into thinking that the proxy is actually the Switch. But unfortunately, the private keys for the Switch certificates are stored in the trust zone, which trust zone is a special part of the processor that awards the highest bounty if you crack it. So it's probably going to be next to impossible for me. So that was a bit of a bummer. I also saw these tweets. It's really disheartening when you see these tweets come out when you're working on this. Like, oh, we got the kernel. It's like, oh, that's great. How did you get the kernel? Oh, we got the Santino Switch trust zone code. That's what I need. Because all these people are working on trying to get this, crack it to put their own programs on it, run the homebrew things. So yeah, it's kind of like, oh no, So I changed tact a bit, and I thought, okay, what about screenshots? So the Switch has this functionality, you can save a screenshot of your game, and it puts it into this album for you. I thought, oh, well, maybe I can put my own pictures in there.Maybe there's a JPEG vulnerability or something. How hard can this be? Well, I realized I had to buy an SD card. I didn't technically need the 128 gigabyte SD card, but it might be great for games later on, I don't know. So first step, just throw a JPEG on there. And I got these little, gray boxes with question marks. Like, okay, that's not great, that's not good. So I had a look at the files that were on the SD card, took a bunch of screenshots. And there's these weird files, there's a timestamp, and there's this hash thing. Now, usually it's the same, but not always, so I don't know what was going on there. The 1st of January 1980 is like the beginning of time for FAT32. Actually, my 128 gig SD card didn't handle that time format because it was like a XFAT or something, and so I had to resort to a 4 gig SD card I already had. That's okay. Still. So I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll just copy one of these files and change the timestamp. Maybe that'll work. Still, this gray question mark. That's weird. Like really duplicate the file, like a sanity check, DD, input file, output file. These are the same. Still nothing. So okay, maybe I'll look at that timestamp, because it had the 1st of January and my copied file was 28th of October. Maybe I need to set mine to the 1st of January. Maybe it's checking that. So you can do that in Mac. You can touch the file which changes the date modified, and then you also need to just change the date created, which you can use in Mac. You can use set file. Still got this random question mark. What is going on here? So I look at the Exif data of the JPEG. You can use Exif tool, and it just prints out a whole bunch of metadata that's stored inside the JPEG. And it's like, it tells you where which camera made it. In this case, it's a Nintendo camera. It's a whole bunch of extra information, what size it is, resolutions, pixel densities. And it had this interesting warning, unrecognized marker nodes. So, well, what are marker nodes? Had a look at that, and it's this binary format that you can use in the camera. It's manufacturer specific, and you can just save additional things about your camera, or maybe you've got a new camera with a special focus setting and you want to encode it in this maker nodes. So I had a look at that. These bytes here, pretty much maybe just some length settings and some padding, pretty useless, not interesting. So they've got these two sequences of bytes. This one is actually that hash thing on the end of the file name. Interesting. So that's actually encoded in the metadata as well as in the file name. But what's this thing? So back to Twitter. Someone else had already found this as well, of course. It was a while ago as well, it was in July. But he'd found out that you can sign in quadruple air quotes then from your PC pretty easily. So that was interesting. He linked to this page that basically said the JPEG's MAC, which is that key that we're interested in, is extracted from, this is the code internally in the switch, how it verifies this. Extracted from the Exif maker note. The timestamp in the file name must match the timestamp stored in that Exif data. That's why I was getting most of those question marks when I just copied it, because my file name changed, but my Exif data didn't change. And the stored Exif marker node is then cleared with zeros, and then they run this HMAC SHA-256 across the entire file, and then using a secret key, hard-coded secret key, that was the trick I needed, must match the extracted MAC. Well, what's the key? So I contemplated, okay, how do I get this key? I don't have a dump of the flash because I haven't finished Zelda yet, and I don't want to break the console before I finish it. So I spent a few hours maybe looking for this key, and it turned out the guy that originally tweeted it said it was in his paste bin on some other phone. It's like someone's like, why haven't you given us the key? He's like, oh, it was in the paste bin all along. So that wrote some crappy Python, which basically does that process that we were talking about. And then I also wrote some screen capture things to take a capture of my screen, and then dump that onto modify the Exif data. You're not really meant to be that. So like right now, I'm actually like running this on the Switch at the moment. It's like, it's a clicker. So. Yeah, don't start on expert mode. Both of those were like really great things to those hardware. If you're running a bug bounty for an IoT device, you probably know what you're doing. Have a plan and follow it so you can get disheartened. But if you stick to your plans, you can keep going. If you've got mentors, ask to hit them up, or people on Twitter that you can ask for questions. It's good fun, can get expensive. Look at all the sweet loot that I got. Well, actually, it was more like that because $150 out of that's okay. Future work, Blueborn, maybe look into the Bluetooth. From the talk earlier, the Bluetooth Stack Smasher looked really cool. There's a new firmware version that includes video support in those screenshots, so I can put videos in my slides. Maybe go back and brute force that camera bootloader. 64 characters is a lot, but I don't know. Maybe it can just run for a few months. That's it.